You're listening to Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions on product and business strategy. And now, here's your host, Bob Caporelli.
Welcome to another episode of Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions about product and business strategy. Real questions from real people in real companies, just like yours. Welcome back, strategy creators. This is episode 94 of Dear Strategy. Another great question coming at you. Of course, before we get there, just a shout out for the sponsor of this show, the company I founded and created, Strategy Generation Company. Go visit us at strategygeneration.com. We offer training and toolkits and services and soon to be online courses all about the subjects of strategy, business strategy, marketing strategy, product strategy, of course. So please go check us out again at strategygeneration.com to learn more about what we do there. In the meantime, let's go ahead and answer today's question. Really great one coming for you. So here it is. Dear Strategy, what is the appropriate measure for the value of a project or product? Is it raw sales, profit contribution, or something else? So of course, those are definitely measurements, right, of a product's success. And if you're inside of a company and you're trying to sell a product, those are the things that are naturally going to come to mind. Sales, profit, possibly market share. Those are the three most common. And I would say that I've probably never gone into a company where at least those first two, sales and profit, aren't on the radar, right? Usually what will happen is that when you go to develop a product or, you say, I'm going to put a product to market, you have some type of a business plan, especially if it requires some level of investment. Then you'll have a formal business case. Give me this amount of money and I will return to you this amount of sales and profitability, this amount to the bottom line. And that makes sense, right? I mean, a company is providing you with some type of capital. You need to, in return, provide those investors or shareholders with some type of cash flow. So it's a give and take, and you need to make sure that that's accounted for. So I would say that most companies would use those measurements or some combination of them as the measurement of their success. But there are two caveats that I'm going to give to that. One of them is just a little twist on this idea about a business case, because although revenue and profitability are obviously great measures of a product, by themselves, they're static measurements, right? So if you really want to measure a product's success, you have to compare your revenue and profit to some commitment that you've made. And usually what you're going to compare it to is the commitment you've made when you put the business case together. Now, believe it or not, this is not as common as you might think. I mean, you would think that, hey, I'm asking for money. I put a business case together. I make certain commitments. And of course, I'm going to track myself against those commitments. But my goodness, that just doesn't happen as frequently as you might think. So many companies, especially larger companies that I go into and I visit and I work with, they go through lots and lots of scrutiny at the business case stage. They just, beat people up over every dollar and cent, making sure that those business cases are as accurate as possible. And then once the money is delivered, meaning that the investment is made, they never look at those commitments again. Now we go into this kind of mode of, annual forecasting, quarterly forecasting, monthly forecasting, but very rarely actually looking back to what the business case projections were. And those business case projections usually were long-term projections, 5, maybe 7 years in some cases. So I always encourage product managers to say, hey, listen, if you're trying to measure a product success, whatever you committed to when you asked for the money, that's going to be your measurement of success. So if you said, I'm going to make this amount of revenue and profit every year for the next 5 years or 7 years, those are your commitments. You have to stick to those and you have to look back at that. So I would say success is how successful were you versus your original commitments. Okay, that's if you're using revenue and profit, which of course are important success measures inside your company. However, and this is a pretty big however, right? If you really want to think about a product's success, I would encourage you to think not about internal measures, but about external measures. Why did you put the product in place to begin with? Did you do it only to make money for you? Because if you did, you're probably not going to get as much success as you think. But If you put the product in the marketplace because you're trying to solve some customer's problem, you're trying to make their lives easier, you're trying to add value to the user, then the next logical thing that will happen is those users are going to pay you for it, right? And you're going to get your internal success based on whatever external success you wanted to get. And that value is going to come down to your value proposition. Now, many of you have probably heard of this term value proposition, but it does warrant just explaining what that concept is for those of you who may not be as familiar with that term. So a value proposition, very simply, is the value that your product is going to bring to your customers. But there are a lot of layers to that value. For example, if I'm trying to put together a product that's a new internet router, I don't know, just picking one off the top of my head, and I say that this internet router is faster than anything on the marketplace, right? So you would think that the value proposition to the customer is that it's fast. Well, okay, but what does that really mean for me, right? I mean, fast could be valuable, or maybe it's meaningless. And maybe to some customers that is meaningful, and maybe to other customers, it doesn't mean a thing. So you have to go a couple of layers deeper than just it being fast. You say, what does fast actually do for your customers? Well, for your business customers, fast might mean that they can process more transactions. And if they can process more transactions in a given period of time, they could actually increase their revenue or their profitability or their customer service metrics or whatever else, right? So fast to them might equal that type of value. For your residential customers, fast might mean that they could watch more movies or be more entertained, or, have less kind of skips or jumps in their music or streaming services or whatever. And so that might have more to do with their well-being, their emotional state, their happiness. And so that's what fast means to them. The point of the matter is that value is not a product feature, or it's not about a product feature. It's about what that product feature ultimately does for the target customers that you're looking for. So a couple of things in there, right, is that value proposition needs to be looked at through the eyes of your customers, and it's probably going to be different for your different segments of customers. Well, that's a lot of complexity there. But if you're really looking to understand how you measure the true value of a product, in addition to your internal revenue and your revenue and profit, which I know you're going to use, think about measuring the value that your product is bringing to your customers, or your value proposition. And think about doing it in terms of some tangible measurement, right? Don't just think about the product feature, think about what customers are actually getting. So again, if you're a business-to-business customer, you have a business-to-business customer, maybe you're going to be able to measure that value in terms of dollars and cents, which would be great. If you have a residential or a more consumer product, you're going to be able to measure that in emotional value, which is not going to be as tangible, but at least you can put it down into some words. And if you can validate that value through surveys or interviews or net promoter scores or some type of a measurement, which is going to allow you to take that, less tangible feeling and put it into a tangible form, that's going to be really important. For my dollar, that's the kind of value I want to measure. And that's how I'm going to know my product is successful. If I said it would have a certain value proposition, I said it would bring a certain amount of value to a customer, and then I can validate that it does, using that in conjunction with sales and profit, which should go together, boy, that's really going to give you everything you're looking for. So that's where I would recommend you go with this thing. Rather than find a whole lot of other internal metrics that you can use in addition to revenue and profit, why don't you look outside and think about the value proposition and see if you can find some answers there. Okay. So if you are interested in asking a question to be featured on Dear Strategy, just go to our website, dearstrategy.net or dearstrategy.com. You'll go to the upper right-hand corner. You'll see a link that says Ask a Question. Go there and you can ask a question to be featured on the show. You could also leave us feedback there. Be sure to read the blogs. You could leave comments on the blogs. We do a blog that goes with every one of these podcasts, and they're really, really valuable. They're not just show notes. They're a full written article that goes along with the messages that we're talking about in the podcast. So definitely encourage you to go out, share that. And I'm also going to ask, if you haven't subscribed to the show formally, please subscribe. Please tell your friends. The subscriptions equal, findability, I guess, if that's even a word. But, when you search for this on Apple Podcasts or whatever else, the only way that it's going to show up under the keywords that we want is if there's more subscribers, more people listening, more people sharing. So please share this if you enjoy the message and if you find it valuable. And while you're doing all that, don't forget to make time for the plan. We'll see you back here on another episode of Dear Strategy. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to Dear Strategy with Bob Caparelli. To learn more or to submit a question to be featured on our show, please visit us at dearstrategy.net.